All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So I am on this tirade, constantly talking about the Division, where I think development for future projects within Massive is, or I suspect it is, based on a lot of their past systems. I would say progression in terms of moving franchises forward that we know of anyways. And I wanted to go ahead and highlight something that recently came to life, or I wouldn't say came to life, but was a surprise in itself. The Division 2 finally made its way to Steam, of all places. Now, this is very interesting because initially when the game came out, Ubisoft decided that they were going to sell the PC version exclusively on their Uplay platform. Now, seeing the way that they actually have backtracked and, in a sense, moved all the way down to Steam is very interesting, and I thought maybe we should talk about how this might be, and I say this might be, indicative of what I see coming forward with this game. Now, the Steam version not only landed on the Steam, in terms of just the base game, we also got the Warlords of New York DLC there as well. And if for any reason you went ahead to buy it at the time they first dropped it, I think it was $9 when it first released, you can pretty much go ahead and, get the DLC as well without having to buy it here on Steam. So if you've ever maybe thought about having a copy on Steam, don't bother. The DLC that you have on Uplay is going to be functional because the game launches from Steam to Uplay and so on and so forth. Also, the Steam reviews are indicative of the game constantly crashing, so make sure you use the easy anti-cheat version to go ahead and modify and make sure that your game runs properly. Now, I think this particular move to Steam is one that is telling us that it seems Ubisoft is looking again and thinking about possibilities if it had maybe launched this game overall on the PC platform. Possibly the PC platform was one of its strongest launches, or maybe it was one of its strongest launches, because we know from the basic Google search that you're going to do that a Division 2 sold about 10 million copies at launch on PC. So this was something that everybody kind of was able to get to see. So seeing 10 million copies on PC was actually very interesting overall. And even with the 10 million copies, it was only on the Uplay platform. So what could have been the possibility if this game made its way to Steam at launch, or maybe other stores like the Epic Games Store as well? Perhaps it might have been able to take on a different perspective in itself. I think it launched on the Epic Games Store at launch. I can't necessarily remember because one of the reasons a lot of different developers were having this conversation was Epic Games had come on the scene and was offering a smaller percentage share while Steam still maintains their 30%. They haven't moved it. They have the infrastructure. They have the fans and audiences and people in their ecosystems, so they can maintain that 30%. And they give a lot more services too, which for the player side, it might be worth it. We don't know about the dev side, but that's actually to be factored in later on. Now, what this might tell us is perhaps we're going to be seeing a lot of other titles from Ubisoft make their way to Steam, and possibly Ubisoft might be taking a Steam launch approach for their future titles. What could this mean overall? This could mean that titles like The Division Heartland is more than likely going to be launching day one on Steam, and it tells me, possibly that with this move, there's probably maybe more Ubisoft new titles that's going to be paid for titles that's launching, which brings me to the Division angle, that The Division might be having another full-fledged game from Ubisoft Massive that's going to be launching on Steam. Now they have the technology in place, they have the integration in place, and so there's nothing else left other than just making sure that their game launches day one on Steam. Now, another really interesting thing about this conversation, it was something that I have to visit from past, comments here within our community. And a lot of folk have, maintained the position that it appears that right now there's probably more conversation surrounding what Ubisoft Massive is doing with the Star Wars game and what Ubisoft Massive is doing with, say, the Avatar project. We haven't heard anything about the release of these two games, and so everything is still somewhat in limbo. And so right now, it appears that we don't necessarily know how Ubisoft is going to take their approach in launching these games and how we're going to maybe see another Tom Clancy project in the middle of all of them. But one thing is quite certain, as much as a lot of these game development publishers are laying off workers and so on and so forth, we have not necessarily seen that same level of approach with Ubisoft. Ubisoft has not necessarily taken the approach of layoffs, which is still a promising, position for the company as a whole, because they are able to lay hold of a lot of their workforce, and not just workforce. I think within Ubisoft, you have to say expertise. As much as many people might mock Ubisoft or make fun of them and so on and so forth, you have to understand that this is one of the most innovative leading publishers and development set of firms in the world right now. Ubisoft is capable of implementing literally any technology that they want to implement across their games. They were one of the first to jump on Stadia, one of the first to jump on Luna. So they do have a lot of technology prowesses, and now seeing them go on Steam seems to me that they're trying to broaden their scopes, because the competition in the market is actually really, fierce. And yes, whether or not they have the library of games that can actually compete with some other companies is up to the gamer. I still think they do. I mean, I know maybe some might say Rockstar or all these other companies, but it seems like a lot of these other companies are starting to take the Ubisoft approach and get out a bunch of games like From Software is. From Software has realized that there is a taste for their games that's been developed with Elden Ring, and so it seems like they're going to go ahead and take that approach to continue to pump out more games. So if you notice, From Software is dishing them out almost every 2 years, starting from when Dark Souls 3, and then Sekiro, and then Elden Ring, and then now their Armored Core game is basically going to be dropping this year according to their plans. And so you can see that pattern going, and Ubisoft is realizing that these companies are closing down the gap, hence they really need to make moves. And it brings me to that aspect where, even though Ubisoft has the technological prowess, they also have the workforce, the expertise, and manpower, which is where I think that Ubisoft, within the massive pipeline, has more than 2 games that are going to be dropping within the next 6 years. Now, I give the 6-year timeline because you never really know where the Star Wars game is going to eventually end. We don't even really know how far away the game has been in development. If I were to take maybe the Avatar announcements to the Avatar release, you can say that that's actually a fair 6 years as time stands, because the very first time we heard about the Avatar game, we heard about it in 2017. It could be that the game had actually been in its conceptualization phase, in its pitch phase, maybe a year or a few years earlier for Ubisoft Massive, or maybe right after they released The Division, because if you want to actually get some background information, you have to really go through the archives. There are videos on Massive's YouTube channel where they actually talk about how they went ahead to meet James Cameron, and James Cameron had seen their work from The Division 1, and he knew that The Division 1 and the work that the developers had done was quite detailed, and he thought it was going to be something that he could basically vibe with. And so the developers were given the go ahead to work on an Avatar game based on what he saw with the detail from The Division 1. So seeing that that's the case, hearing the Star Wars announcement, I'm going to give that 6-year timeline as that, because you take Avatar, which is now in year, number, 6 now after we heard of the announcement. So you might be looking at 6 years for Star Wars from when we heard about its announcement in 2022. So 2028. Now, from now till 2028, can anybody tell me that Ubisoft Massive is going to be sitting here pretty, only wanting to maybe have Avatar for 5 years as their one game? I doubt it. I think a Division game is here to basically fill that gap, and Ubisoft Massive is working on it. So when you start looking at these little holes and you take maybe just some logical reasoning, I think it goes to show that we might have a Division, team that's actually been working on this game right after the Division 2 came out. Think about 2019 and think about the turnaround. It took the team at Ubisoft Massive a 3-year turnaround to punch out a second Division game after the first one. This is very impressive because they already had the very first game done and they were able to leverage a lot of mechanics from within it. And then now we're looking at, say, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. We're now at the 4th year and we haven't really heard anything. I don't think it's an indication of, say, there's nothing in the works. I think it's an indication of just basically the amount of, ambition that's probably going to be going into this project. And perhaps this project might be big enough. They're trying to use Heartland as a bridge or resurgence in order for them to be able to, say, provide a stopgap so that when this game is ready, which is, I think, the next Division follow-up, or maybe something else within Massive, the developers are capable of going ahead to, providing, say, a good game, something that's actually appealing to the audience. And at the same time, the community is not necessarily left too hungry after all this time. But this is something that we have to basically pay very close attention to, and hopefully we get to see or hear some news pretty soon. But like I always do, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what it is that you think about all of this. And I'll be dropping another video pretty soon. We'll be talking a little bit more about these and a few pointers that I see across the industry that tells me that this is what we might be seeing very soon. So thanks so much for watching, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.